Hello, everyone, and welcome to the London's Pretty Cool podcast. We have another great guest and episode for you. Today, we are speaking with Richie Bloomfield, co-founder of Sidetrack, a Wortley café. This was a fun one for me personally. I am a coffee addict, like way too many cups of coffee every day, and as a Wortley resident, I have visited Sidetrack quite frequently, especially during quarantine after my daily walks. In this episode, Richie tells us all about what goes into opening a cafe, the coffee community in London, the ethics behind the coffee beans and tea that they sell, gives us some hints on how to brew the perfect cup of coffee at home, and much more. If you're listening to the audio version of the podcast, be sure to subscribe to London's Pretty Cool and rate it 5 stars if you feel like. And if you're watching us on YouTube, subscribe, comment, and give us a like to help the pod grow. Now grab yourself a cup of joe and let's get into the episode. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the London's Pretty Cool podcast. My name is Erin Briggs.
And I'm Patrick Briggs.
And we are here with another amazing guest for the London's Pretty Cool podcast. We have Richie Bloomfield, co-owner of Sidetrack Cafe in Wortley. How are you doing today, Richie?
Doing well. Excited to be here.
So could you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you started getting into the coffee business?
For sure. I am someone who's grown up in the London area my entire life. I went to school here, did my post-secondary here as well. Funny enough, didn't actually start drinking coffee until my very last year of post-secondary education. I was one of the people that said, you just need water and apples. You guys need your coffee. You're so lame. And then I had a really, really terrible early morning class, and I was honestly just bored. So I got a Starbucks, which is the closest thing available to me on campus, drowned it in cream and sugar, and was like, this is okay, I guess. And then that was the slippery slope. And here we are. I'm now co-owner of a cafe, and I spend most of my free time experimenting with coffee.
That's amazing. I actually am kind of the same way. I'm a late coffee drinker at this point. You know what I mean? Erin, though, I think is also the case. Erin, when did you start drinking coffee?
It was the same. It was in university when in Meal Hall, you're able to have coffee for free. You just get to go and like fill up your coffee cup. So I just started drinking that when I had an 8:30 a.m. stats class that it was not fun. So you started drinking coffee, and then again, cream and sugar, a lot of that, and then found out I'm lactose intolerant, so had to go to black, and now I'm just a big coffee person, like love it, try to pay attention to it, can't live without it.
Very relatable.
Yeah.
I'm sure you're the same way, Richie, in that sense where, once you get the flavor for something that you like, you kind of keep going for it, right? What made you kind of decide to push even further than that and go into business?
Yeah, the business story is, I guess, a little bit of a different background. So, as you know, I'm a co-owner. So my business partner, Nano, and I met working together at the university, and we both had just kind of passing conversations about how we thought it would be worthwhile to get involved in some kind of small to medium-sized local business. We thought a lot of really smart university talent tends to go to like large corporations, and there's a lot of other businesses that make our economy happen and would be well suited to have that kind of balance. So that was the motivation initially, and then we just basically set out to meet as many people as we could, see what was kind of available, and then naturally your passions come through. So Mano is a passionate tea drinker. That's also relevant to a cafe, and I'm on the coffee side, and there's not a lot of overlap between us in terms of our beverages, but I guess thought that would be a pretty good combination. And when this opportunity came up, we jumped at it.
That's great that you have a little bit of coffee and a little bit of tea, because that's how you, I feel like like a cafe, they normally focus on one or the other. They either have really good specialty coffee drinks, and then it's just your average tea flavors, just bags of tea put in the thing. I know you guys do loose leaf teas and everything like that, so it's great that you kind of have both sides of the cafe picture.
Yeah, there's certainly no way we could ever serve just, your average run-of-the-mill bag tea. Certainly not if it was going to be Mano and I together. So there is high-quality loose leaf tea from another local company, which is Tea House in the Covent Garden Market.
But I just think that'd be funny if you were to bring in, if Mano's not around, you're just kind of like, I just want some tea, and you toss in something, and he just suddenly appears, like, hey, like not in here, no way, no chance.
That would be pretty entertaining. He has been known to correct us on our terminology on, different types of tea. So there's been a lot of education around that for the team. Stuff that, again, I would never know myself, which is great. It's really helpful. And yeah, that's been a fun dynamic.
So what made you choose to open Sidetrack in Wortley Village?
I guess I could say when the opportunity came, the location was fixed. So it was the Fire Road Cafe before us, and so they were putting it up for sale. We knew that Wortley Village would be, an exciting place for a cafe, and I think that, that's not necessarily always the case. It's hard to find really great locations that have foot traffic, that have a community that really cares a lot about its actual neighborhood, a lot more excited about that opportunity. And we knew that this location had a long history of other cafes or actually restaurants if you go further back in the history. And so we thought that was kind of a cool legacy to continue.
I wish that the newer kind of suburbia that was being built all around the city kind of had this sort of option, where they did have a part of the community that they really cared about, because in a lot of these new areas, you'll get that same sort of, we'll get the Timmy's there, we'll get the gas station there, we'll get the, maybe a KFC or something like that. You're not really getting a lot of like really great local options within the community and everything, like within walking distance of a neighborhood. So it's really great that you found like Wortley Village is such a great opportunity and such a great spot.
Agree that not all of the new developments have been maybe thought to that end, which is unfortunate. And I mean, I've certainly heard from people that there's a kind of high demand for these kinds of shops in those areas, but it's just really hard to make them work for a variety of reasons. Real estate costs and just the foot traffic problem would be two massive barriers just off the top. But yeah,
totally. Yeah, I guess you'd have to set up some sort of very specific shop to accommodate that community. But I mean, coffee is so perfect for anything. You've got people biking throughout the summertime, just like, anyways, I'm rambling here. Speaking of, there are many coffee shops in the city, like Black Walnut is right across the street in Wortley. How is the coffee community in the city? Is there a lot of competition, or is it more collaboration?
Yeah, I think that's a really fair question, and one that gets asked quite often, which makes sense. Like we are right next to another cafe, and there's probably a few different ways I could answer that. Give a quick side shout out to the new little initiative that popped up, which is the London Espresso Network. You may have seen it cross your radar, but basically someone just took a map, kind of like a transit-looking map, and then put all the places where you can get espresso beverages in the downtown core, and plotted all of those cafes on it. So to your point, there are a lot of them, which is awesome, because these are all independently owned shops that are kind of not your big chains. And so in that sense, there is all kinds of collaboration. I mean, obviously we we work with some of these other cafes. So Rebel Remedy, for example, supplies some of the products that we sell, and has their own cafe on Dundas Street. So there's lots of examples of that. And depending on the neighborhood, so for us in Wortley Village, we've already spoken about this, there's just a ton of people are out and about that care about their neighborhood. There's 3, 4, 5 restaurants on the street. There's enough room for 2 cafes, kind of the easiest answer. And there's different offerings at every restaurant. There's different offerings at every cafe. So, the Walnut, for example, would be more focused perhaps on baked goods as a bakery, and we're a little more focused on kind of the science of espresso, the beverages, the tea as well, of course. And so, yeah, these kinds of differences, I think, are where there's room for more than one in close proximity.
You mentioned you sell products by other, some of these local makers, Rebel Remedy, Booch, Kombucha. Why did you, or how, excuse me, did these collaborations come to be? And why do you think it's important to collaborate and use local?
I guess I would say that just like we already had that principle in mind, like that, we were going to be local focused. I think it'd be tough to be a locally owned independent cafe or restaurant or whatever and not have at least some inclination towards supporting your own community and your neighborhood. So in some ways that almost comes naturally, but I guess I can speak for myself. Like I do strongly believe that that kind of focus matters more than just like a casual, like, yeah, it's good to support local, like that's the right thing to do, kind of nothing really below the surface. Like, I think the microeconomic, what's the word I'm looking for? The support between people who are living within the same community is going to probably be more important, not less important in the future. So I think there's more awareness that's starting to happen, but I'm not finding the right words for this, but I might circle back to that later and flesh that whole thought out. But to speak to the rest of the question, which was how these specific relationships came up, I mean, we really just sought them out, or in some cases there might have been like a pre-existing relationship. So, I'm involved with Urban Roots London, and we supply vegetables to places like Rebel Remedy and sometimes Booch. So, those are 2 examples that you gave that we already had that. I had that relationship personally. Mano had a relationship with the tea house owners, so that was our natural location for tea supply. And then, in other cases, they might have either approached us or we approached them to see if it was a good fit.
I like that. The collaborations you chose are great choices, by the way. Yeah. The Rebel Remedy is such a favorite of our listeners and our guests as well. It's a constant choice for favorites in the city.
You had kind of mentioned that where Sidetrack is now, it's been like fire roast in the past. There's been many iterations of a cafe. There was also Red Roaster. Did this help make a decision that where you wanted to open Sidetrack, or did it make you a little nervous kind of seeing 2 coffee shops not like kind of withstand the time in that location?
Yeah, that's a good question too. I think there was definitely the risk that we would have the same, it wouldn't work out for us as well. I think once we were able to learn a little bit about the history of how those operations were working and what they were doing, what they were offering, we thought that it could still be done differently in a way that should work, fingers crossed type of thing. I mean, anyone that starts a business, I think, would say that there's an element of, we're not sure if this is going to actually work out, but like we think, we have a hunch that this might work out. I don't know if I've said this directly, but both Mano and I come from studying business and in the academic context. So we had this real desire to, apply it to the real world and say, this is almost like and we joke about making it our PhD in business, is like we're going to actually go do it and learn by maybe failing, but hopefully not. And so far, I mean, so good. Fingers crossed. Again, it's been a really, relatively short period of time, but we're pretty happy with things so far.
You both coming from a business kind of background, what would be like do you have any advice to other people who are thinking of owning a business or opening something like this in the city? Do you have any kind of like little pieces of advice for our listeners who want to become entrepreneurs as well?
I'd like that question too. I mean, my gut is just to say, I like go for it because I want to see more of that happening, of course. And then my more pragmatic side would say, certainly if you're going into a brick and mortar style business, food service is an obvious one, but there's others that would be similar. Be cautious on the capital upfront costs that may be required to get to the starting line. I think that's underestimated by most people, and ourselves included. So, things like renovations really quickly start adding up, and, it's justifiable, of course, but, once you're operating, you obviously have to pay for that. So, I just want to make sure that you're probably better to be cautious in that regard, just as a kind of pragmatic piece of advice.
That's a great point.
Yeah, for sure. Because it definitely, you think it's only going to cost a certain amount of money to get something started. And there's always going to be some kind of something thrown in the road that's going to mess up all your plans. So having that extra.
Get your quotes from whatever you need. Add 20%, and then, probably another 10%. That's what I like. I think I've heard those rule of thumbs before, people saying to budget for more, but I think the how much more is maybe still underestimated in a lot of cases.
No, I just think that's so interesting. I think that goes into play with like any sort of project. Is so many things get underestimated, and you have this goal set in mind, like the way you described it, it seems like I've even had the thought before where you go, oh, I've looked up this space, I've checked the leasing price, it's only this much a month. Let's go, what's the problem? Let's go do it right now, kind of thing. And you don't realize, like, to make it the way that you really want it to be, to represent the business that you want it to be, takes a lot of work and takes a lot of professional help. A lot of times, maybe not just you and your handyman dad helping you out or something like that.
And by all means, if you've got family and friends, I mean, truthfully, it was my friends that were helping in some of those renovations, but they don't work for free either, and I'm not expecting a donation to my business. Yeah. But yeah, the time is actually another factor there. But the money is one thing, and of course you have to worry about the investment costs. But I think even still, I will get frustrated thinking like, we have got 10 ideas and we want to implement them tomorrow, but like you just can't do that. Like, it's just not possible. And I think I'll probably personally struggle with that in part from my personality, I'm guessing, but I guess I'm slowly learning that I'm going to have to deal with that tension, and things just tend to take longer than you maybe anticipate.
Yeah.
Totally.
I feel like time is always underestimated. You'd say, oh, I'll get this done in a week, and then 3 weeks later you're still working on it. Maybe that's just me because I'm a procrastinator, but
I would even say, like, I just remembered flashback to so we took over at the very end of November of 2019, and so for a short period of time, it was you wouldn't have necessarily known, like, it's new owners, but it still showed fire roasted on the signs, and nothing had really materially changed. And of course, we then ran into a pandemic, but around that time, so I remember this because my birthday's in March, and the world kind of fell apart shortly thereafter. But I had taken down the old sign, and we had painted what's behind me in white. So people obviously knew something was changing, but it wasn't until, I'm going to say, the end of June or something, that this was actually up. And so that 3-month period was not what I was anticipating when I took down the other letters. I was very, excited. I said, we've got this sign, it's coming right away. And, weeks go by, and, paperwork delays, whatever, paint, layers of paint. It just took more time.
Mm-hmm.
And now you got the sign up. It looks great. So why did you choose the name Sidetrack for this cafe?
Another long debate. We actually polled our customers. It was one of the first things we did. So we had made a short list. By the way, the short list that we first made doesn't even have Sidetrack on it. So that tells you how far this went. But we had a short list of names. And then we also had a blank space for customers to give us ideas. So that was a lot of fun. And there actually turned out to be some pretty passionate opinions about some of the ideas. And I think one of the biggest takeaways was pretty well everybody wanted to have, the Wortley piece in the name. So one of the names actually was just the Wortley Cafe.
Right.
And that was really a popular one. So hence the name now, like it's Sidetracked Wortley Cafe. That was our way of kind of keeping that there.
Mm.
But we, after we did that, Mano and I were still kind of just not feeling like we had found the name. And we obviously both really wanted to feel good about it. It's not something you plan on changing very often. So the name Sidetrack had come up. I can't remember how it came up at first, but again, probably just a brainstorming session, between the two of us or maybe some friends. And this particular time where the decision was made, it was probably like 1 a.m. We had just been like cleaning up the cafe or something, having a meeting. Things tend to go late into the night for us at that time. And, I was driving him home, and we just kept having this conversation. And a couple of things stood out for us. Like we both tend to go on tangents when we talk, as you're witnessing. And that felt really good as like go on sidetracks. We can play on that. And then that also made a lot of sense for, what a neighborhood cafe should be, is a social place where friends, neighbors, people bump into each other and they get sidetracked in a positive way. So we like that as a natural kind of tie into, the third space idea. A friend of mine had written an article not long before about kind of just how important that space is and why it matters to communities. So I probably had that in the back of my mind. And I think Mano, had some other kind of connection from his side of the word sidetrack. He probably liked the training aspect because he's an engineer, but I'm not 100% sure on that, and so I feel a little bad. I don't want to misrepresent that. So there's a missing piece to that probably, but that's my side of the story.
That's it's a great way to. I was just gonna say it's right. You go to a coffee shop with a friend. Hopefully you get sidetracked and it's like, oh, why are you late? Oh, I was just hanging out having a coffee and we just were catching up and lost track of the time. That's what you're supposed to do at a cafe, in my opinion.
and that's very close to my social perspective. Like I'm very, going to talk to people and be late. And that is a very daily occurrence for me. And that actually reminds me, I do think that Mano also saw it on the being in a space where you were sidetracked on your own. like you're able to be in a public space, but you're deep in a book, or you're deep in your work, and maybe getting sidetracked in that, but that is different than being at home.
Right. Totally. As someone who did most of my university career sitting in cafes, it's the way to go. So I like that one too.
I'm also thinking about that. You're making me reminisce when, like, those winter days when you could, like, come into a cafe and just like warm up and everything. This pandemic has definitely held that at a distance. So this is I'm sure it's been really nice to have that atmosphere back in your shop.
Yes, the cozy element, which is something we did talk about in some of our kind of like early branding descriptions. Like, the space is small, so cozy is kind of necessary. But yeah, that there is definitely a lot of people, myself included, sounds like everyone on this call, that being in those places are really nice.
So getting into the coffee, you sell detour coffee from Hamilton and fire roasted coffee from here in London. Why did you choose to sell from these coffee roasters?
And the fire roasted side, it was a direct legacy. Obviously, there's people that were going there that liked the coffee, so it was kind of a no-brainer to keep that around. And we had to figure out what it was that was drawing people in. I mean, the local aspect for sure is definitely a piece of it. And asking me now, like, it's pretty clear that there's a cohort of people that really like your kind of classic dark roast style coffee, and fire roast is really good at that. So in fact, they now since then have worked with us to develop our own dark roast blend that you can only get at Sidetrack, and we serve that every day. So that took a year of learning kind of what it was that those customers were looking for. And then Detour was a connection that I had, and I really liked their coffee, and obviously tried a lot of different coffee roasters in the past. And so I really liked what they did from a coffee standpoint, but they also had some just fantastic partnership opportunities for their cafes. They really kind of, I think, were unique, certainly at the time, having programs with cafes that were not available anywhere else. So supporting you getting your equipment, because they wanted to make sure that if their coffee was going to be served, like, it was going to get served really well.
Yeah.
And that was their own learning after 10 years of roasting. Like, they had tons of cafes that were serving their coffee, but then they would get disappointing results sometimes because the equipment wasn't right, or wasn't programmed right, or maybe they didn't have water filtration systems. So we knew that we weren't going to be a cafe that could just keep doing kind of basic coffee serving, and we had to do something more than that. And there seemed to be, I mean, this is probably the hunch part, like, there's probably people in the woodwork in this neighborhood that are really looking for kind of espresso focus. So that was really where Detour's expertise came in, again, along with that kind of partnership. And the relationship has been very positive this whole time. Like, they're very quick to say, hey, we want to try this new thing. Like, do you guys want to pilot that for us? And we love that kind of thing. And I spoke earlier that Mano's engineering background, so the techniques of making good coffee is super exciting for him too. So yeah, that's been a lot of fun.
In the coffee industry, there is some unethical practices, definitely coming from third world countries, or I don't know if you're supposed to say that anymore, but do you look into the ethics behind your coffee beans when you're getting, and how the workers are being treated?
I finished my sentence and immediately panicked that I didn't speak to that. So that's great that you asked that question. Absolutely. And that's a huge thing for me. And I come from a farming background. I've been kind of immersed in the food production space for most of my professional life. And I care deeply about equity in that space. And it's a very non-equal space in our global systems that we currently have. So yeah, that was actually something that detour is direct trade, and I know there's a lot of different language around things like that. So fair trade is different than direct trade, and 6 other different terms you might hear from different people. And so really, like, it's what's most important to me anyways is not necessarily like this one is better than that one. It's do they actually have the information to back it up. And Detour really does. And they've been working directly with a lot of the farmers that they supply from for many, many years. And they, as best they can, continue those relationships into the future. And of course, it's one thing to have a relationship, but we also know what they pay for the coffee that they buy. And we know that double usually at least what you're seeing in quote unquote market prices, which is really important for the small scale producers that I guess I would say a lot of people don't know. I mean, in my circle, like in the cafe culture, it almost feels like old news. But if you sample the population, I would say it's still pretty new news that in the $20 bag of coffee, like 50 cents went to the farmer that actually grew that, and that's problematic. So
for sure.
No, ethically sourced products is what people travel for 3 hours for, to get their food, at like Remark or something like that, or and I think that's important that people know where they're sorry, I should be, not just me, but people in general think that it's more and more now more important to know where your food's coming from and know that it's sourced ethically. So that's very amazing that you're doing that as well. You also sell your own coffee as well. It's called Dark Side. How did this come to be? And do you have any plans to make more of your own coffee flavors?
I kind of alluded to that briefly, but that came out of conversations with Fire Roasted to develop our own dark roast. So we put together a bunch of trials with them, experimenting with a few different combinations, and really like the one that we landed on. And we do want to kind of expand that. It's not present, like we're not in the middle of a project that I can't tease you with 3 new coffees are coming next week. Like it's probably going to take us a bit of time. But certainly it was successful enough to consider more, and it was a lot of fun. Like just having these blind trials with different combinations of origin beans, and maybe one was also the same Guatemala Costa Rica mix or whatever it is, and but it was a 60-40 versus like a 70-30 split. And you're trying to figure out like what's that perfect sweet spot for the most number of people possible. It's a really hard thing, but it's fun.
That does sound like a lot of fun.
Sounds really scientific too, trying to get in and getting all of like the numbers and how everything's right, and kind of doing a generalization of how everyone likes their coffee.
Yeah, and I think if we had space, and maybe someday we'll figure a way to do microbatch roasting in that space, but I mean that's a huge kind of different thing than what we're doing now. Obviously doing that would be motivated by the fun that we would have experimenting with that, and we're never going to be producing crazy amounts of coffee in a space like the one we have, but for now, like I said, we have fantastic partners, so they know what they're doing, they have the expertise, and like we're happy to work with them.
That could be some really fun, like future event night or event day or something like that, where you've got some special roast that you're trying to experiment with, and you're like, hey, today we're testing out a bunch of these different roasts. Come down, give us like fill out this form of all like what you think of all these different roasts. That'd be a fun. I'd take part in that. That'd be great.
I like that idea. We did sample with our customers the top 2 or 3 dark roasts that we had before we decided on this. And again, they didn't have a name at the time. It was just 1 or 2, and then you you voted with your empty, you got 2 small cups and like you just voted with whichever one you like. So yeah, kind of thing. We love doing that.
Honestly, that's a good idea to do it 1, 2, 3, because if you've got names, people can get attached to how like fun a name can be and just want that one to win, sort of thing.
Totally.
I also wanted to ask about your vegan and gluten-free food options, and what made you want to venture into this like amazing food realm?
That was another kind of pretty early on realization that there was probably a lot more demand for those kinds of items that wasn't really available in a cafe in our neighborhood. So we thought, we need to make sure that we're focused on that. And when we first opened, we actually had the privilege of being neighbors with Kate, who had her bake shop just across the street from us. So she was able to supply us with our initial kind of batch of vegan goodies and gluten-free. And then, as luck would have it, I guess, our other main partner is, of course, La Noisette Bakery, and La Noisette Bakery now are one thing. They've merged together. So that was like the best thing that could have happened for us, because we already were using La Noisette and love what they do. And same with Kate, and now they're in the same room. So that was really cool. But I think it was actually kind of, there was no big revelation. It was almost like a no-brainer. It's like, yeah, we should definitely have options for everybody, and that was something you can probably see play out in our options for non-dairy things in your beverage. So oat milk, almond milk, that kind of thing. We have never charged any extra for those options, which is not typically not very common, let's say. And that to us just so almost felt like a no-brainer, despite the fact that it wasn't very common. Because I mean, quite literally, some people just can't have dairy, so there's that right away. And then also, if you want to make the choice, which is typically a more environmental positive choice, we should probably support that, or at least not penalize you for it, I guess is the way to say that.
I think what's fun about becoming, Aaron and I are lactose intolerant, and becoming lactose intolerant later in your life, you do have that process of having to, like, those 7 stages of going through like this death of something in your life. But at the same time, like, you realize, especially now, there's so many great options available that it makes it pretty easy to be, not easy, but a lot easier these days to be, or just to be making more environmentally friendly food options. And that's awesome that you're making that available to your community.
Go
ahead, Aaron.
No, I was just going to say, I love that you don't charge more for getting like the almond milk or oat milk, because that's always such a thing when you go to Starbucks. It's like, it's going to be like an extra like 50 cents just to change the milk. It's like, is it really worth it? But then you drink your coffee with the normal milk in it, at least for me. And then later you're like, oh man, I should not have done that. My stomach is in a lot of pain. But it's that, it's not worth like asking that extra 50 cents. It's not that big of a deal. So just makes it really easy.
Yeah, I mean, that just hearing that alone like makes me very happy that we do that. It's like, why would I want my customers to be making the choice between a like uncomfortable stomach with my beverage or like just getting the one that they can drink? And oat milk has, taken off clearly. I mean, that was something that 3 years ago people were like, what's oat milk? And now it's definitely the preferred option for most people that are drinking non-dairy, which is great because it's also the most environmentally friendly of the bunch. So
that's so cool. Yeah, vegan options are good options, and I love that you're doing that.
So I have some questions, just kind of like, I'm a big coffee person. I love to drink it. So what is something that you would say that coffee drinkers or brewers are likely doing wrong if they're just like doing something at home that they could quickly change and make their coffee a lot better?
Well, that's a fun question. I don't want to say wrong. That sounds too negative because I mean, I make terrible cups of coffee at home all the time. So there's kind of an inevitability, which is also why ours even exists in the first place. Because even I will go to my cafe constantly to get coffee that I'm super excited about. Because sometimes you just need that kind of like level of equipment and so on. But nevertheless, I would say one of the things that helped me the most was literally any kind of water filtration you can get. So a Brita filter is not what we're going to use in the cafe, but certainly better than not using any kind of filter, because this is not going to sound shocking, but coffee is majority water. So the water matters a lot. I remember the first time someone told me that, and I was like, "Oh yeah, that makes total sense." Because it's just, I think the beverage is so like not translucent that we put ourselves into thinking like this is some kind of magical sludge, but like it's just water. And it's in coffee. So that would be my first recommendation. And then after that, I think it's a matter of preference. So just find your home brew station that you like the most. So of course I've gone through like the French press, the AeroPress, the pour over, et cetera, et cetera. And honestly, I quite often will use a French press at home. And I have learned a couple of tricks. Like I don't plunge my French press, for example. I let it sit for about 9 to 10 minutes to settle the grinds to the bottom. They'll naturally settle. And then I just basically bring the filter to the top of the water. And then it doesn't disturb any of the grinds, and I can just pour it out. And it has a lot less of the kind of silt at the bottom because the grinds don't get disturbed. As soon as you plunge, they all get disturbed and come rushing back up. Stop most of them, but not all of them.
Oh,
very interesting.
That's good to know, because we use a French press here too, and I literally just got a new one for my birthday. So it's like I was just using the new one today, and so now because that's always when I'm plunging it, my boyfriend will be like, "You're going too fast. Like there's all the stuff's coming through if you go too fast." So it's like, okay, just a little bit, and it'll be perfect then. Got it.
That same thinking, the same, like logically I could see the disturbance, and plunging fast I knew was a bad thing, but I never stopped plunging it anyways. And then it's James Hoffman, who's a pretty famous YouTube coffee connoisseur. I watched a number of his videos, and one of them was about that. So it wasn't my own genius, but I'm happy to spread the word about making a better French press coffee. But yeah, the thing is, like at home, if you have the privilege and the time to make your own coffee and have fun with it, like just pull cafe, see what they have available. They probably have some equipment that you can try. And they probably have people that work there that can tell you how to use it. And so give it a try and see what you like.
I was going to ask in your personal opinion, what the best way to brew coffee is. Because I know there was a big uptake, especially over COVID, maybe, because I watched a lot of YouTube videos and people were getting into pour over and trying to figure out the perfect way to do that. And everyone was saying that's the best cup of coffee is if you do like this perfect pour over. But in your personal opinion, what's the best way?
I'm going to say also grind your own coffee before the use, which is a pretty common piece of feedback. I know that's not the question, but I didn't say that either. But if you can fresh grind your coffee, that's going to also change the game versus having it ground and sitting there, and it just loses so much of its flavor potential. And then, I dodged this question because I don't know if I have a good answer for it. For me, anyways, like it's so much like what mood am I in? Because like I do like a pour over coffee, but not very often. I do find that the profiles that come out are just not what I'm looking for in a morning coffee anyways. But that's just me personally. And I also have like the classic, what is it, Proctor Silex, whatever, drip machine. And like, I still make that sometimes. I'm like, you know what? I feel like I want some diner coffee at home. Just why not? And so I will make that up if I'm feeling, I don't know what it is. Maybe it's a rainy day and I just want that dreary pot sitting there and dripping in the kitchen. I don't know what it's, but mood based.
It's all based. And then one more, just again, personal opinion, and maybe it's because there are some people who are like super, I guess, coffee snobs is the way, like it has to be done this way. And if you do anything to it, how do you feel personally about like the cream and sugar, people adding lots of milk or sugar just to change the taste, make it more of a dessert coffee? Do you think that changes how people like will appreciate coffee, or is it just no holds bar, whatever people want to do?
I get it. I'm not a total purist. Like every once in a while, I will add a dash of dairy or sweet, sweeten my coffee with something. Although I will say, like, I think when you experience a really good coffee, you generally don't need to add to that. And that was something like, if you had given me a shot of espresso like 3 years ago, I'd probably not be very excited about it. But then that was before I realized, oh, like if you dial the shot based on the air pressure and like have a water filtration system, and the ratio of water to coffee grinds is exactly precise, wow, this is really delicious. Like it's not even, there's nothing hitting my tongue that's like, whoa, that's aggressive. It's just nice. So there is that for sure, and that's something that we obviously try really hard to do at Sidetrack. But yeah, I mean, I don't, my personal opinion is not that you have to have your coffee black, I would say.
Is there a go-to order for you in your shop that, like, when you come in, you're mentioning you drink your own coffee and you're excited to do that. Is there a go-to order when you come in?
Flat white, and everybody knows that. Like it's amazing because I don't even have to say it anymore. It's just there's a flat white that's being pulled as soon as I'm within visual sight. Yeah, that's my perfect kind of balance of espresso and milk. So a latte to me is just too much dairy or oat milk, whatever it is. Like it's just I'd rather want more espresso pulling through. So flat white's definitely the most common, but I will say on a hot day, cold brew is a definite favorite for me. And then more recently, we've been using we've brought in shaken espresso, and it's basically what it sounds like. You shake it up with some ice, but it's like foamy and cold, and that's something that I never experienced before because. If you're, for example, someone drinks like a cappuccino, you want your milk foamier than a latte. But in cold drinks, you just pour the milk into an espresso. Like there's nothing else there, right? There's no foam. But this changes that. And there's something about a cold foam that's just wild, and the flavor is really delicious. So if I had a recommendation for someone on a hot day, I would say try shaken espresso. It's very good.
That does sound really good. That sounds really good. And if you personally are not going to Sidetrack that day, what local coffee shop are you going to? And I know that might be a tough thing to answer, so you don't have to. But is there a favorite of yours?
Yeah, you put me in a tough situation there, but I mean, we actually are pretty lucky in London, given and I mentioned that network of how many different independent places. Like, I mean, I already mentioned Rebel Remedy. I'm obviously a fan of what they do. You definitely you would have seen me in Locomotive in the past, and I stop by when I'm in the neighborhood, and. I mean, Backroads is a favorite of mine too, and I'm really, really sad that they're not continuing. But yeah, those are probably the first three that you find me in. But at any given time, you've probably seen me in pretty well every cafe that exists in the city. So.
Love that.
Good answer. Just spreading it around so everyone gets a little love.
That's right. That's the best way to do it. Now, if you don't mind, I think we're going to, Erin, are you agreeing we're going to get into the London-based questions?
Yeah, I was just going to say, if you want to tell our listeners, like, where's Sidetrack located, how to find you guys on Instagram, everything like that, before we move on to some London questions.
So we are located at 136 Wortley Road, right in the main street, attached to Tucky's Home Hardware. You can find us on our website, sidetrack.cafe. We're also same handle on Instagram and Twitter. And I'm not sure about the handle on Facebook, but of course you can just search the name on Facebook and you'll find us there. Yeah, hopefully we'll see you soon.
Perfect.
Well, we are going to get into some London-based questions as we are the Forest City. We are going to be putting you on the spot with a couple other tough questions here. I know you're a purveyor of everything local, but do you have a favorite place to eat in the city?
Oh, yeah, I really should have prepared for that. Oh, man. I don't want to give the answer of like, oh, it just depends how I'm feeling. That's not a helpful answer. I'm going to have to say that I'm going to define maybe the type of dining. I know I'm being really annoying. Like, casual lunch, or like I'm going to grab dinner. So for long, as long as I can remember being like an adult in London, like if I wanted, just some like solid pub food, like I'm going to Morrissey House, like for sure.
Totally.
Yeah. Love what they have. Yeah, like that was kind of like the perfect, pub food restaurant for me. And then some of probably one of the best dining experiences I had was Reverie on, I want to say Piccadilly, I'm pretty sure. I would get Pall Mall and Piccadilly flipped around, but I'm pretty sure that's Piccadilly Street. Anyways, they only had like 12 seats available. This is pre-pandemic, but they really, really go like over the top in terms of, hyper local, and they get like, crazy things like, mushrooms you've never heard of before that are, creatively on your plate. And you're like, what is this crazy thing? And it tasted amazing. And then the desserts that they made out of this world. So yeah, there you go. I gave two answers. I'm going to stop there.
I love it. Love it.
Those are some two good answers. So we'll let it slide. London is also a city of neighborhoods. So what would you say is your favorite neighborhood in London?
Oh, wow, you are really putting me on the spot. I've lived in Old East Village. I've lived in Woodfield. Obviously spent a lot of time in Wortley, Old South, and love all of those places. I have my heart kind of like somehow still aligns a lot with Old East Village, like in an optimistic way. Like I was kind of really sad when the grocery store didn't work out, and I really want to see that community thrive, because I think it is great, and there has been and there continue to be like awesome things going on there. So yeah, I mean, I guess if I have to put my stake in the ground, I'll say that. But there's good neighborhoods in the city that are all over the place.
OEV is amazing. Great choice. Now, is there a London small business that you couldn't live without?
Well, everything on the Espresso Network, obviously, is the first answer. Trying to think of what else, or what would be. Well, you know what? The next thing I would say that comes to mind would be Tucky's hardware store. Yeah, I mean, I'm obviously very physically close to them with the cafe, but a local hardware store is and it can't be underestimated. That is a valuable thing to have, I would say, rather than having to drive to like the outskirts of town for some Lowe's or whatever. Nice to have that community shop.
Yeah, you can just walk right up to it. You don't have to get to some giant parking lot or anything like that. Yeah, that's actually really great.
I was gonna say that's a really good answer. So
yeah, I like that as well. Yeah, it reminds me of we spent a lot of time in our youth in Lucknow, and we would go to the home hardware there because it's just in the like this little strip area, and I can just imagine the local community loving that because it's just like right along the street with everything else, and you can just grab it and go.
I also grew up with a small hardware store that sadly no longer exists in Ilderton, and I have many memories of going there, with my parents or whatever to get something. So yeah, totally.
So if you were to have a perfect day in London, what would it entail? Like, give us your play-by-play for a perfect day.
So London has lots of awesome green spaces, I think, for a city. So, pick a trail, pick a park, whatever, there's so many good ones. We definitely involve time there. I'm going to have to, after my walk or a bike ride, I'm going to have to make sure I enjoy some espresso somewhere, clearly. That's going to be necessary. Perfect day would continue. If I'm going to get an espresso, I'm going to need some food. So this is probably pretty standard answers. I'd have to go get a nice, probably a patio because it's summertime. So we're in that mindset. And then I would say to finish that off, a nice game of croquet with some friends.
Oh, I like that.
That's a good one.
Answer, yeah.
And I can't take credit for that either. I'm just a walking poster for other people. But a good friend of mine had recently been like, "Hey, we should play croquet." I was like, "Yes, that's a great idea." And it is a great idea. I think what a lovely way to spend nice weather time outside with people.
That is a great idea. I gotta get into that. Yeah, like you can go to any green space and just set up a croquet setup. That's a great idea.
Yeah.
And do you have a specific patio that if it was perfect, you'd be able to get a spot no problem, or is it just any kind of patio?
I mean, I guess I said Moore's house. I mean, I think that patio is pretty nice. But yeah, you know what? There's actually a lot of nice. The Wolf Brothers have a really great cross street from us. They've done a lot of work, and that's a great space for the summer.
That is a really nice patio.
Is there a hidden gem in the city? Now, hidden gem could be a person, place, or thing.
I want to say I said this podcast in a previous interview I had. So
very kind.
That answer, I guess, because whoever's listening already knows about this, which is a pretty cool podcast. Hidden gem, yeah. You know what? I feel like that's one of those questions where I think it's a hidden gem, but I'd be like, oh yeah, we know about that, or hidden gem. I'm used to hearing. I spent a lot of my time at the university. Like, London's boring. It doesn't really have anything. That mentality. So I think I would just say the hidden gem is beyond, Richmond to Dundas. Which not to say there's nothing cool there. There obviously is. Lots going on there, but if you just keep going south, then all of a sudden you're in Wortley Village. Whoa, so cool. Or if you go east, then you're in Old East Village or Woodfield, or etc. So yeah, I think there's the good thing or the hidden gem about London is the number of different communities. Like you go farther in Byron, like, that's a whole place than, Wortley or the others I mentioned. So I liked the fact that there are kind of distinct neighborhoods that have their own character. That is interesting in my opinion.
Well, that rounds up our London-based questions, but we do have one more game before we finish the episode today. It is a classic game here on the podcast. It's called This
or
That.
that.
I hope it's not as hard as the last one, because those are tough questions.
It's even harder.
Yeah. So this is a rapid speed round. So we are going to get you to try to answer just a this or that. We're going to give you two options, and you're just going to try to answer as quickly as possible. Okay.
So you truly are making this hard, because I give you long answers every single time.
We don't need an explanation, nothing, just the heart, just one or the other. And these are going to be things that are pretty similar, so it might be tough.
All right, I'm ready.
All right. And we'll start with Western Fair Market or Covent Garden Market?
Western Fair.
Sunfest or Home County?
Ooh, Sunfest.
Masonville Mall or White Oaks Mall?
Masonville.
Dundas East or Richmond Row?
Dundas East.
Springbank Park or Gibbons Park?
Springbank.
Fanshawe or Western University?
Huron.
We'll take it. Odyssey Records or Grooves Records?
Odyssey.
Brown and Dixon or City Lights?
Brown and Dixon. These are hard.
Would you rather bike on the Thames Valley Parkway or hike in one of our environmentally significant areas?
Thames Valley Parkway.
And London Brewing Co-op or Anderson Craft Ales?
Brewing Co-op.
Boom!
You did it! Woo!
All right.
See, it wasn't that bad.
Made it through. No cuts or bruises. You're all good.
Only broke the rules once.
But it was fair. We'll let that one slide. We've had a lot of people just go both. It's like, that's not the game.
Well, Richie, thanks so much for taking the time with us today. If you'd like to take the opportunity to plug anything about the business right now, please feel free to do so.
Anyone who's listening who hasn't heard about us, come check us out. Come grab an espresso-based beverage at our takeout window in the summer. So if you've got a dog, a stroller, a bike, super convenient. Check out Wortley Village while you're at it, of course. And if I had to make one extra plug for summer, I would say we have got ice cream too. So if you're looking to cool down, you can grab a cup of ice cream. And maybe after you get a nice bagel bomb, which are by far and away the most popular snack that people will get at our cafe.
I was going to say, I just recently got a Snapchat from my friend. She got a bagel bite and she's like, this is the best thing I've ever had.
Do you
Her
know?
Bagel bomb.
Yeah. Do you know what one it was by chance? I'm always curious.
I'm not sure 100%, but she said it was delicious.
We can report back.
Yeah.
Investigate further and
Will do.
let me know. But there's now 6 options, so there's always a heated conversation around like what the best one is. And I recently changed. I used to say jalapeno cream cheese, which is still a delicious option, was my number 1, but the Philly cheesesteak is out of this world. So
that sounds really good. Yeah.
It is. It's taking the number 1 spot for me personally.
Amazing. So count me in for a visit this weekend.
I'm Richie Bloomfield from Sidetrack Wortley Cafe. You're listening to London's Pretty Cool Podcast.